Looking back, we seek to understand that moment and that one man who so ably turned the tide, provided the leadership, restored our nation's standing on the world stage, and brought us to our rendezvous with destiny.
Governor, are you prepared to take the constitutional oath?
I am.
From his distant Irish ancestral homeland to his native Dixon, Illinois, across our nation's heartland and in ventures everywhere, he embodied an optimism and idealism that were uniquely American, values that all America revered.
For us, faith, work, family, neighborhood, freedom, and peace are not just words. They're expressions of what America means, definitions of what makes us a good and loving people. The heart of America is strong, it's good and true. The cynics were wrong. America never was a sick society. I've never felt more strongly that America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead. We're a powerful force for good. With faith and courage, we can perform great deeds and take freedom's next step, and we will. Let us be sure that those who come after will say of us in our time, that in our time we did everything that could be done. We finished the race, we kept them free, we kept the faith. Thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless America.
He did some things, I think, that that no other president, or at least no president for a long, long time, has done. He restored America's pride and confidence in itself. I really don't think it's too much to say that he reinvigorated the institution of the presidency, which had really suffered serious erosion in the aftermath of Vietnam, in the aftermath of Watergate, in the aftermath of the malaise experience of the Carter administration.
It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans.
I think he believes in the wisdom and the basic inherent good sense of the American people. He talks about that. And I think that's very, very genuine. I don't think that's rhetoric that some speechwriter stuck in his speeches.
All we need to begin with is a dream that we can do better than before. All we need to have is faith, and that dream will come true. All we need to do is act, and the time for action is now. Thank you.
The Ronald Reagan presidency was really a unique presidency. It was the first successful two-term presidency for some 30 years, going back to the Eisenhower presidency. You have a president who will leave office with his job approval rating way up in the high 50s, low 60s, or middle 60s. That's unprecedented to see an American president with a job approval rating like that in the 8th year of his term. Even in the darkest hours of the Reagan presidency, his personal approval rating was way up in the 70s and remained there because the American people genuinely loved this president.
The other day I was asked, how do you want your administration to be remembered? Well, the first thing I thought was, well, I'd rather that you not have to remember it any time too soon. But I thought about it, and I said then, because I never thought about it before, I'd like my presidency to be remembered as the one that gave the government back to the people.
Ronald Reagan did believe in the people, and we in him. He could speak for us because he understood us and what we had in common. We became uniquely intertwined in our dreams for the future, in our hopes for our families, in sharing the burden of our problems, and in putting the lessons of our past in perspective.
We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of men, and the air was filled with the crack of rifle fire and the roar of cannon. Here in Normandy, the rescue began. Here, the Allies stood and fought against tyranny in a giant undertaking unparalleled in human history. These are the boys of Pointe du Hope. These are the men who took the cliffs. Through the words of his loving daughter, who is here with us today, a D-Day veteran has shown us the meaning of this day far better than any president can. I'm going there, Dad, and I'll see the beaches and the barricades and the monuments. I'll see the graves, and I'll put flowers there just like you wanted to do. I'll feel all the things you made me feel through your stories and your eyes. I'll never forget what you went through, Dad, nor will I let anyone else forget. And Dad, I'll always be proud. It is enough for us to say about Private Zanata and all the men of honor and courage who fought beside him 4 decades ago. We will always remember. We will always be proud. We will always be prepared, so we may be always free.
The president is an extraordinarily warm and friendly man, as you know, and it's impossible to be with him for more than a few minutes without warming to him and without feeling not only sympathy but liking for him. And he conveyed exactly the same thing to the troops. The armed forces had been frankly treated rather badly by the American people and certainly by the American government. The president really reversed this by not only a number of his talks, but by his visits with the troops. And this, again, was one of the proudest achievements, I think, of President Reagan, is the enormously improved morale and the fact that now more people want to get in the armed forces than we can actually accommodate with the funds appropriated.
And of all our accomplishments, none can give us more satisfaction than knowing that our young people are again proud to wear our country's uniform.
That military valor and skill were soon put to the test.
Early this morning, forces from 6 Caribbean democracies and the United States began a landing or landings on the island of Grenada in the Eastern Caribbean.
We knew the Prime Minister had been murdered, a lot of his cabinet had been killed, and when this urgent request from the neighbors came that we go in, the President decided quite quickly, he was understood the risks, understood that there could be loss of American life, understood that perhaps even the 1,000 hostages could not be rescued. But he went in firmly and decisively. He supported us in all of our plans completely, and the result was an enormous triumph. And that, of course, is the essence of leadership.
I'm so glad to meet you and to be able to say it officially, welcome home.
The American students paid their own way to come to the White House a few weeks later and tell the president how enormously grateful they were and what real danger they were in. And that was a very dramatic thing.
A great many of you said you believed you'd be dead or held hostage today if it weren't for the courageous men whose business it is to be courageous. Our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen.
I remember that ceremony at the White House very well because one of the students said that he had been what he described as a typical student who regarded the administration in Washington as virtually an invention of the devil. But he said you only need one rescue to make you a believer.
I think that we're often so caught up in criticizing our government and our military that we lose sight of the admirable qualities that they possess. 2 weeks ago, I saw those qualities in action. For the American military, I have only praise. They acted in a manner that all Americans can be proud of. But let me say that I have learned a lot from this experience. It is one thing to view an American military operation from afar, and quite another to be rescued by one. Thank you for bringing us back to the United States. There is truly no place like home. Thank you.
Some of our fellows didn't make it back. Ted and Jan Stathos wrote me a letter, as so many of you did, and I'd like to read just one small passage because it says so much. While we waited for the Rangers to evacuate our campus, we experienced many chilling and sad moments. The most upsetting of these was the sight of an American helicopter being shot down by enemy fire. There were tears in everyone's eyes as we scanned the ocean water for the sight of any survivors. We knew then how much our lives meant to the brave men fighting for our safety.
Americans resort to force only when we must. We have never been aggressors. We have always struggled to defend freedom and democracy. We have no territorial ambitions. We occupy no countries. We build no walls to lock people in. Americans build the future, and our vision of a better life for farmers, merchants, and working people from the Americas to Asia begins with a simple premise. The future is best decided by ballots, not bullets.
Purpose, patriotism, honor. One historian wrote of this American president, Reagan does not argue for American ideals, American values. He embodies them.
Let the celebration begin. The poet called Miss Liberty's torch the lamp beside the golden door. The glistening hope of that lamp is still ours. Every promise, every opportunity is still golden in this land. And through that golden door, our children can walk into tomorrow with the knowledge that no one can be denied the promise that is America. Her heart is full, her door is still golden, her future bright. She has arms big enough to comfort and strong enough to support. For the strength in her arms is the strength of her people. She will carry on in the 80s unafraid, unashamed, and unsurpassed. In this springtime of hope, some lights seem eternal. America's is.
Indeed, we admired him for his beliefs, that we too believed, for his spirit that also filled and moved us, for his common touch, and for his courage in uncommon circumstances.
President Reagan!
The warmth of your words, the expression of friendship, and yes, love, meant more to us than you can ever know. You have given us a memory that we'll treasure forever. And you've provided an answer to those few voices that were raised saying that what happened was evidence that ours is a sick society. I have a letter with me. Letter came from Peter Sweeney. He's in the 2nd grade in the Riverside School in Rockville Center. And he said, I hope you get well quick, or you might have to make a speech in your pajamas.
A friend of the president is remembered as once saying, his shooting was symbolic in a way. It was as if people thought, if he can laugh, if he can bounce back after being so close to death, maybe the nation can bounce back too.
It is time to reawaken this industrial giant, to get government back within its means, and to lighten our punitive tax burden. And these will be our first priorities, and on these principles there will be no compromise.
The nation he inherited on Inaugural Day was the most economically depressed in American post-war history. And our best hope for a recovery, he had felt, was a dramatic departure from the past.
Next Tuesday, all of you will go to the polls. You'll stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
In 1976, Jimmy Carter promised to hold inflation to 4%. Today, it is 14%. He promised to create more jobs, and now there are 8 million Americans out of work. He promised not to raise taxes, but taxes have risen more than 70%. The time is now for strong leadership.
The last decade has seen a series of recessions. There was a recession in 1970, in 1974, and again in the spring of 1980. Each time, unemployment increased and inflation soon turned up again. We coined the word stagflation to describe this. Inflation remained in double digits, and government spending increased at an annual rate of 17%. Interest rates reached a staggering 21.5%. There were 8 million unemployed.
During the recession, a recession that frankly I think was attributable to the policies which the administration inherited in the first term, people were fond of blaming that on what they call Reaganomics. It was interesting how they stopped using that term as that recession turned into a recovery and then into an expansion.
It was our longest peacetime economic expansion in history. Inflation fell to its lowest rate in 20 years. The increase in real family income was the largest in 14 years. Business investment achieved a 35-year high, as did the gross national product. Unemployment dipped to a 14-year low. The personal and corporate tax rates were reduced to their lowest in over 40 years.
We made the most sweeping changes, of course, in fiscal policy that this country has seen in 30 or 40 years. It has now been proven that reducing marginal tax rates does stimulate economic activity, stimulate investment. It has, I think, been the driving force behind this unprecedented economic expansion that we've seen.
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates and inflation down, more people are buying new homes, and our new families can have confidence in the future. America today is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
America's best days lie ahead. And you know, you'll forgive me, I'm gonna do it just one more time. You wait, see nothing.
One of the reasons I think that George Bush won so handily in the election of 1988 were that the two macro issues of peace and prosperity were solidly in his corner as a consequence of the Reagan presidency.
A quick wit and gentle humor were genuine hallmarks of his personal and public style.
I used to work for a fellow named Jack Warner, whose favorite trick at any public appearance that he had to make was to start with a speech and then say, "What the hell was that?"
The president was great at anecdotes and jokes. And being an old performer, he loved an audience and always warmed up to an audience reaction.
Some years after I graduated from Eureka College, I returned to that school and they gave me an honorary degree, which only compounded a sense of guilt I'd nursed for 25 years because I thought the first one they gave me was honorary. You know the story of the fellow who ordered a bouquet of flowers to be sent to the opening of his friend's new branch office. And when he got there, he was shocked to see flowers with the inscription, "Rest in peace." He was so outraged that on the way home he stopped at the florist to complain. And the florist said, just think of it this way. Today someone in the city was buried beneath the flower arrangement with the inscription, "Good luck in your new location."
Terrific sense of humor. He's the best joke teller I've ever run into.
There was an agent overseas and happened to be in Ireland, and there was an emergency and it was necessary to contact him immediately. So they called in another agent and they said, now you'll go there, his name is Murphy, and your recognition will be to say, "'Tis a fair day, but it'll be lovelier this evening." So we went to Ireland, little town in Ireland, into the pub, elbowed himself up to the bar, ordered a drink, and then said to the bartender, how would I get in touch with Murphy? And the bartender says, well, if it's Murphy the farmer you want, it's 2 miles down the road and it's the farm on the left. He said, if it's Murphy the bootmaker, he's on the second floor of the building across the street. And he says, my name is Murphy. So he picked up the drink and he said, well, 'tis a fair day, but it'll be lovelier this evening. Oh, he said, it's Murphy the spy you want. Well, he's... You know, one day the great baseball manager, Frankie Frisch, sent a rookie out to play center field. The rookie promptly dropped the first fly ball that was hit to him. On the next play, he let a grounder go between his feet and then threw the ball to the wrong base. Frankie stormed out of the dugout, took his glove away from him and said, I'll show you how to play this position. And the next batter slammed a line drive right over second base. Frankie came in on it, missed it completely, fell down when he tried to chase it, threw down his glove and yelled at the rookie, you got center field so screwed up, nobody can play it.
The striking thing to me about Ronald Reagan is that he was the same in private as he was in public. He was, there was never any deception about him at all.
You know, I was devoted to some other activities such as football and swimming and campus dramatics, and I've often wondered since if I'd spent more time and worked harder as a student, how far I might have gone.
I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night in the Superdome. It's going to prove something I've always suspected, that when I finally got to the home of the Saints, it would be filled with Republicans.
But no president, however positive in spirit, can escape those inevitable challenges that put one's entire fabric to the test.
Mr. President, these are not easy times in which to assume and to bear the responsibilities of national and international leadership. The problems are many, the dangers real, the decisions difficult. Indeed, weaker spirits might even be tempted to give way to gloom. But others, like you, Mr. President, are stirred by the challenge.
As you know, our embassy in Beirut was the target this morning of a vicious terrorist bombing. I know there are no words that can express our sorrow and grief over the loss of those splendid young men and the injury to so many others. I know there are no words also that can ease the burden of grief for the families of those young men. In the wake of the barbaric act committed yesterday by the Soviet regime against a commercial jetliner, the United States and many other countries of the world made clear and compelling statements that expressed not only our outrage, but also our demand for a truthful accounting of the facts. The world notes the stark contrast that exists between Soviet words and deeds. What can we think of a regime that so broadly
trumpets its vision of peace and global disarmament, and yet so callously and quickly commits a terrorist act to sacrifice the lives of innocent human beings? What can be said about Soviet credibility when they so flagrantly lie about such a heinous act? What can be the scope of legitimate mutual discourse with a state whose values permit such atrocities? And what are we to make of a regime which establishes one set of standards for itself and another for the rest of humankind?
My fellow Americans, at 7 o'clock this evening, Eastern Time, air and naval forces of the United States launched a series of strikes against the headquarters, terrorist facilities, and military assets that support Muammar Gaddafi's subversive activities.
Inside of 2 mile. Master arm out, master arm out. Turning into me. Roger that. 5 miles. 4 miles. Fuck, get it, lock him up. That's it. Just lock him up, sir.
The evidence is now conclusive that the terrorist bombing of La Belle Discotheque was planned and executed under the direct orders of the Libyan regime. When our citizens are abused or attacked anywhere in the world on the direct orders of a hostile regime, we will respond so long as I'm in this Oval Office. A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
Among these trials, this one humanly engulfed him.
On December the 1st of 1986, Reagan summoned this panel that he'd created to the White House, Ed Muskie and Brett Scowcroft and myself, and he charged us to get all of the facts, pledged the total and complete cooperation of the White House. He said he wanted all of the facts unvarnished, so to speak. He wanted an objective, completely factual report.
As the Tower Board reported, what began as a strategic opening to Iran deteriorated in its implementation into trading arms for hostages. This runs counter to my own beliefs, to administration policy, and to the original strategy we had in mind. There are reasons why it happened, but no excuses. It was a mistake.
I think the president's to be commended for the fact that he was prepared to have the soul of his own administration bared for public scrutiny.
Colonel North, please rise. Do you solemnly swear that in the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
The president, I think, genuinely wanted the facts to get out. And I must say that when the report came out strongly critical of his policy judgment and of the implementation of that policy, that he took it in a very manful way and owned up to the mistake. And I don't know of any time in history when a president has done that.
The goals were worthy. I do not believe it was wrong to try to establish contacts with a country of strategic importance or to try to save lives. And certainly it was not wrong to try to secure freedom for our citizens held in barbaric captivity.
He overcame adversity on the strength of his character, and on the strength of his conviction, he chartered an historic path to peace.
I had a discussion with my daughter Amy the other day before I came here to ask her what the most important issue was. She said she thought nuclear weaponry.
In the past, any impetus toward truly advancing the peace process floundered, perhaps because our leaders were unwilling or unable to acknowledge the obvious.
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
There is a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all. Some people say the bear is tame. Others say it's vicious and dangerous. Since no one can really be sure who's right, isn't it smart to be as strong as the bear?
Initially, the president was staunch and pragmatic in both his approach and his attitude.
Not naivete or self-delusion. A recognition of what the Soviet Empire is about is the starting point. Winston Churchill, in negotiating with the Soviets, observed that they respect only strength and resolve in their dealings with other nations. That's why we've moved to reconstruct our national defenses. We intend to keep the peace. We will also keep our freedom.
He was determined and undaunted, but he was wisely also conciliatory.
People of the Soviet Union, there is only one sane policy for your country and mine to preserve our civilization in this modern age. A nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. The only value in our two nations possessing nuclear weapons is to make sure they will never be used. But then, would it not be better to do away with them entirely? What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies? Let me share with you a vision of the future which offers hope. Some say it will bring war to the heavens, but its purpose is to deter war in the heavens and on Earth. Now, some say the research would be expensive, perhaps, but it could save millions of lives, indeed humanity itself. And some say if we build such a system, the Soviets will build a defense system of their own. Well, they already have strategic defenses that surpass ours, a civil defense system where we have almost none, and a research program covering roughly the same areas of technology that we're now exploring. And finally, some say the research will take a long time. Well, the answer to that is, let's get started.
We've embarked on a total change of strategy for the first time, and that is we're now building, and I hope very much we will continue to build and deploy, a defense against nuclear missiles, something that we had, by signing the ABM Treaty years ago, which was a terrible mistake, I think, we had in effect said that we wouldn't ever have any kind of defense against these missiles. Now we're building it, and it's the Strategic Defense Initiative of the President. It's again the essence of leadership, the promotion of new ideas which violate the conventional wisdom, but which can offer, I think, more hope and more safety to mankind than any strategic concept in at least several generations.
His quest for a lasting peace began as a lonely crusade, but in slow, steady, measured steps, he brought his message to center stage among the nations of the world. In England's Great Guildhall, before a gathering of members of Parliament,
More than 5 decades ago, an American president told his generation that they had a rendezvous with destiny. At almost the same moment, a prime minister asked the British people for their finest hour. This rendezvous, this finest hour, is still upon us.
To the German people and before the Bundestag,
we will move ahead with our preparations to modernize our nuclear forces in Europe. But again, we also will work unceasingly to gain acceptance in Geneva of our proposal to ban land-based intermediate-range nuclear missiles.
Beside the Iron Curtain at the Brandenburg Gate,
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Tear down this wall.
And above the cliffs of Normandy, France.
I tell you from my heart that we in the United States do not want war. We want to wipe from the face of the earth the terrible weapons that man now has in his hands. And I tell you, we're ready to seize that beachhead.
And to the next Soviet generation, the university student in Moscow.
Nations do not distrust each other because they are armed. They are armed because they distrust each other.
The power of his words and the strength of his resolve unified the support of the Allies, compelling the Soviets into negotiation. These historic Reagan-Gorbachev peace summits spanned 3 years and 3 continents. Finally,
Состоявшийся в эти минуты обмен ратификационными грамотами начал отсчет эпохи ядерного разоружения.
The instruments of ratification means that the era of nuclear disarmament has begun. Let it be said of us that we too did not fail, that we met the test and preserved for them, in their day, the sacred flame of liberty, this last best hope of man on earth. God bless you and thank you.
America has regained great military strength, and that has brought us the first treaty in history in which the Soviets gave up all of the positions they said they'd never give up, and gave up a complete system of weapons, nuclear weapons that could cause great damage. All of that came about not because the Soviets changed their views or their spots, so to speak. It came because we had regained immense military strength, and because the President worked consciously and effectively at maintaining our alliances.
You, Mr. President, have successfully negotiated the first reductions in nuclear weapons. You changed attitudes and perceptions about what is possible, the most difficult thing of all in politics. And you've done it not by bowing to the wishes and whims of others, but by standing firm in your own beliefs. It's as if you had said at the beginning of your life in politics, "This I believe. This I act upon. This I will always believe. This I will always act upon." And thank goodness you have.
Throughout my tenure as the Prime Minister of Japan, I enjoyed and appreciated so much the warm friendship with Ron. I once called him a great architect. He put the tumble-down house called the Free World back in the shape again, shoring up the pillars and tightening the roof bolts. Only his strong will and deep insight made such achievement possible.
President Reagan sees the big picture. He has always believed in certain principles which he believes in very devoutly, holds to those, and he's very much a big picture person, but he's been a very, very effective and successful president.
Ronald Reagan is a great communicator. He comes across as being concerned about people, as being fond of people, as being warm and friendly, and he's the kind of guy it's hard to dislike. How can anybody dislike Ronald Reagan?
Your leadership has made America strong and confident again. Your personal courage, your gentle humor, and your spirit of optimism are all part of the special quality which you have brought to the presidency. Above all, and in this you have done the greatest possible service, not only to your own people, but to free people everywhere. You have restored faith in the American dream. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the summit. Thank you for your presidency. Thank you for your testament of belief. And God bless America.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. We're go for main engine start.
Nowhere do we so effectively demonstrate our technological leadership and ability to make life better on Earth than our next frontier, space.
Start, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Roger, roll, Discovery. Cruise control program, Houston now controlling.
Our progress in space, taking giant steps for all mankind, is a tribute to American teamwork and excellence. Our finest minds in government, industry, and academia have all pulled together, and we can be proud to say we are first, we are the best, and we are so because we're free.
But great nations achieved their monumental strides only at great costs, as we were to learn on one fateful day in January 1986.
And here comes the flight crew now. Commander Dick Scobie, followed by Mission Specialist Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, and pilot Mike Smith, followed by Krista McAuliffe, teacher in space, and Ellison Onizuka, and payload specialist Greg Jarvis. Big smiles today. Confidently getting into the van. They're going to go out to that pad and attempt a second try at launch today.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange. Engines throttling up. 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go with throttle up. Challenger, go with throttle up. 1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Together, mourn and honor the valor of our 7 Challenger heroes, and I hope that we're now ready to do what they would want us to do. Go forward, America. Reach for the stars.
But fate was such that other tragedies befell us, and as surely as a common purpose bonds people together, so too does heartache and the response of a gentle, human, healing touch.
Mr. President, Mrs. Reagan, with us today are many of the families of those superb soldiers in Task Force 3502 who did not make it home from peacekeeping duties in the Sinai. Mr. President,
most of the young men and women we mourn were returning to spend the holidays with their families. They were full of happiness and laughter as they pushed off from Cairo. Those who saw them at their last stop spoke of how they were singing Christmas carols. They were happy. They were returning to kith and kin. And then the terrible crash, the flags lowered to half-staff and the muffled stops, and we wonder how this could be. How could it have happened and why? In life, they were our heroes. In death, our loved ones, our darlings. And just as you think today of the joy they gave you, think for a moment of the joy you gave them and be glad. For love is never wasted. Love is never lost. Love lives on and sees us through sorrow. From the moment love is born, it is always with us, keeping us aloft in the time of flooding and strong in the time of trial. They will never grow old. They will always be young. And we know one thing with every bit of our thinking. They are now in the arms of God.
An unexpected firing of an Iraqi missile, and 37 sailors aboard the USS Stark were lost. On the president's shoulders, he carried the grief of the entire nation.
That for all the lovely spring and summer days we will never share with them again. For every Thanksgiving and Christmas that will seem empty without them, there will be other moments too. Moments when we see the light of discovery in young eyes. Eyes that see for the first time the world around them and know the sweep of history and wonder, why is there such a place as America? And we can answer them. We can answer them by telling them of this day and those that we come to honor here. Yes, they were heroes. Our time is now. Our moment has arrived. We stand together shoulder to shoulder in the thickest of the fight. If we carry the day and turn the tide, we can hope that as long as men speak of freedom and those who have protected it, they will remember us. And they will say, here were the brave, and here their place of honor.
Terry and Steve Salm back at Wrigley Field, and it's with a great deal of pleasure that I introduce to you the President of the United States, taking over the role of a play-by-play announcer, Ronald Reagan, at the mic.
Well, Harry, thank you very much. You know, in a few months I'm going to be out of work, and I thought I might as well audition.
He didn't seem a likely prospect as legacies go. He was a small-town boy, growing up in Dixon, Illinois. He displayed an avid enthusiasm and above-average skill in school sports. Upon graduating from Eureka College, he confronted his first real career decision.
It hadn't occurred to me really what I wanted to do or anything except get a job of some kind or other. It was those kind of times. And then, knowing that radio might be the shortcut to anything else, I said, I'd like to get into radio. I think I'd be a sports announcer.
His decision to become a radio announcer took him first to Chicago, to station WHO in Des Moines, Iowa, and eventually to Hollywood, where a screen test propelled him into becoming, according to a nationwide poll, the most popular leading man on the silver screen, second only to Errol Flynn. In 1939 and 40 alone, he starred in no less than 14 feature films. Some 47 years later, the president recounted his best-known role as George Gipp in Newt Rockney All-American.
Sometime when the team is up against it and the brakes are beating the boys, ask them to go in there with all they've got and win just one for the Gipper. I don't know where I'll be then, but I'll know about it. I'll be happy.
In 1943, he played Johnny Jones in the screenplay version of Irving Berlin's Broadway success.
All right, men, you know who's going to be out in front tonight? Our boss, the President of the United States. Now, you guys are giving a lot of great shows, but tonight's got to be the best one of all. All right, Sergeant. Attention! Riano. Here. Burns. Right. Clemens. Here. Spencer. Yeah. Berlin. Berlin.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning. Oh, how I'd love to remain in bed. For the hardest blow of all is to hear the bugler call. You gotta get up, you gotta get up, you gotta get up this morning.
Years later, the president humorously recalled that Irving Berlin was totally unaware of his status as a current box office success in his favorite film, King's Row.
I'll sit down. I'll put it on the table.
That's that kick in the third section today, sis. Fixed it straight and soon as a die.
That's the stuff, Todd.
When Paul retires and I get the next section going.
Drake.
Mr. Monahan, I'm Drake McHugh. Maybe you've heard about me. You wonder if you haven't, the way people gab. And most of what they say is true. But the one thing they can't say is that I ever do anything behind anyone's back. Well, I've been taking your daughter out buggy riding. I like her and she likes me. But I won't do anything in the sly, so if you've got any objection to my going on seeing her, now's the time to spit it out.
Why, no.
Now, what have you got to say?
Won't you sit down and have some supper?
At about this same time, while serving as union leader of the Screen Actors Guild, his politics began to take on a noticeably more conservative note. Then, beginning with one very special speech he gave on behalf of Barry Goldwater's bid for the presidency, neither the nation or Ronald Reagan was ever to be the same again.
I had no idea at that time that Ronald Reagan would ever want to go ahead in politics. I began to sense, though, during the '64 campaign of mine that he was interested. My campaign wasn't basically directed at awakening the American people to the values of conservatism. That did, however, get to be a big main thrust.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
A prepared speech to be delivered that night was handed to me. I read it over, and the thought came to me, this speech is not me. The thought came through my mind, what's wrong with Ronald Reagan? So we got in touch with him, suggested that this speech could be made by him, and with any changes he wanted to make. So thank God he agreed to do it. And he used the speech with some changes.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
And it wasn't long after that speech before literally dozens of Californians began to kick their money in and beg him to run, and he did.
Mr. Reagan is a man of great integrity and common sense.
If we are to place political experience as the only criteria for making our decision, we have in Sacramento men with 8 years political experience, and I think that's what's wrong with California.
The next governor of the state of California, Ronald Reagan.
I've called this press conference to announce that I am a candidate for the presidency and to ask for the support of all Americans who share my belief that our nation needs to embark on a new and constructive course.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
In this land of dreams fulfilled, where greater dreams may be imagined, nothing is impossible. No victory is beyond our reach. No glory will ever be too great. So now it's up to us, all of us, to prepare America for that day when our work will pale before the greatness of America's champions in the 21st century. The world's hopes rest with America's future. America's hopes rest with us. So let us go forward to create our world of tomorrow in faith, in unity, and in love. God bless you and God bless America.
My fellow Americans, this is the 34th time I'll speak to you from the Oval Office, and the last.
Remarkably, over the years, he never lost sight of who he was or why he came. Power didn't change him, nor did politics compromise him. The adulation didn't overwhelm him, or could the critics dissuade him. Perhaps it was due to those abiding anchors in his life, his faith in his Creator, his vision for our nation and belief in the people, the commitment to his ideals, but most assuredly, it was his unyielding love for Nancy.
Someone very special to me. She has helped so many of our young people to say no to drugs. Nancy, much credit belongs to you, and I want to express to you your husband's pride and your country's thanks.
I was supposed to introduce my roommate. who happens to be my husband, who happens to be the President of the United States.
I've known the guest of honor for many years. Well, yeah, that's true. She was once one of the original members of the Reagan Inner Circle. Well, I can't dispute that. Who's been involved in some of the most delicate White House matters, such as high-level staff. Maybe I better do this by myself. In fact, I've been thinking for several days about what exactly I wanted to say today, how to put Nancy's role in my life in perspective for you. But what do you say about someone who gives your life meaning? What do you say about someone who's always there with support and understanding? Someone who makes sacrifices so that your life will be easier and more successful. But what you say is that you love that person and treasure her. I simply can't imagine the last 8 years without Nancy. The presidency wouldn't have been the joy it's been for me without her there beside me. So Nancy, in front of all your friends here today, let me say thank you for all you do. Thank you for your love. And thank you for just being you.
In one of the last feature films that Ronald Reagan made, his co-star, Nancy Davis, found it a bit more difficult to elicit such a romantic response from the president.
What are you going to do after the war, Case?
I've told you 100 times.
I want to hear it once more.
I'm going into the surplus business. I'm going to buy up all the old mines and sell them to the man on the moon.
There's no water on the moon.
How do you know so much about the moon?
I know a lot about it. I spend all my time looking at it when you're away. That's how it still is with me, Case.
There are cycles and rhythms to life. There are times to enter, times to stay, and times to leave. And today the curtain begins to close on the Reagan era of the Republican Party. We've had a wonderful run, but the time has come for the Bushes to step into political leading roles.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
There is a man here who has earned a lasting place in our hearts and in our history. President Reagan, on behalf of our nation, I thank you for the wonderful things that you have done for America.
Nancy and I will be forever grateful for the honor you've done us, for the opportunity to serve, and for your friendship and trust.
Perhaps Ronald Reagan best summed up his own presidency when he said, "This journey's not just been my own. It seems I've been guided by a force much larger than myself, a force of ideas, of what this country is and what it could be. The story that will be is not of a president, but of the people, determined and dedicated to the greatness of America and their faith in its bedrock traditions."
To each one of you I say, tonight is the end of nothing, it's the beginning of everything.